Okay, so even though there are already a ton of turning videos out there, I wanted to show a little bit of how I actually do things as far as making my products, so I thought I would make yet another one. This is an absolutely massive blank of Paduk wood that I made several of them and just trying to divide up evenly and give myself a little bit of extra room for some of the larger pens. It ended up being kind of huge, so it seems suitable that I make an El Grande pen out of this one. El Grande is a kit that I currently buy from Lee Valley. I'm not sure where else to buy it. It does have some plastic parts on it that make it seem not as refined maybe as some of the higher end ones, or even a Baron or Baron Sedona have metal parts on them. But I like the fit. One of my favorite pens that I've made for myself is an El Grande, and I also love the fact that the fountain pen uses a number 6 nib, which is much easier to find replacements for. So for example, the one I'm currently using, I have an extra fine Goulet nib on, and it writes beautifully. So I like them for that. So I have a few kits here. Let me double check exactly what I have. I've got one in chrome, which would work out just fine, although chrome tends to match everything. Do I have one in gold? Yeah, it might be. I think I'll go with the chrome on this. Wait a minute. Yeah, that one's in gold. Yeah, the gold might go better with that color. So we'll just get that started. Now what I've done here is I have a blank holder on the lathe, and I have a chuck on the tailstock, and this can actually fit right in there if I make it a little wider. And that allows you to actually drill right on the lathe, which tends to be a lot more accurate than using a drill press. But this is huge, so I'm going to cut this down first into pieces for the two blanks. There are two pieces for this kit. One is the cap and the other is the body. So just to note the different parts here, this kit comes with two tubes. One of them is larger than the other one. That's for the cap, that's for the body. So if I measure these out, you can see I'm only going to be using that much of the blank. So I can easily make two El Grande pens just with this blank. I want to leave a little bit of room for mistakes and for the pen mill, just to square off the ends. So actually it's easier to do this side since I'm right-handed. We'll go about there. And if I mark the body at that spot and give it about the same amount, that puts us there. And that's where I'm going to cut, and then we'll drill those. Okay, not rocket surgery so far. Alright, so after a quick visit to the bandsaw, that's what we have. And we need to drill these now. So, just start with the larger one. Just secure that blank in. Nice and tight, that's not going anywhere. And then out of my little, got a little drawer here for my different kits. I've also got my drill bits corresponding to those kits, otherwise I would get them completely mixed up. I would never figure them out again. There we go. And from there it's just a matter of pushing this tailstock forward. So let's get that done. Not my cleanest work, especially considering we caught there for a minute, but all seems well. Clean this guy out. Now we just switch over to the other drill bit, switch the blank. Let's get that out of there. So, not too bad. Nice clean through and through. Make sure it's nice and tight. Alright. Get a second drill bit set up. I'm sure you can predict how this is going to go. And there we go. Okay, let's drill through the second one. Clean off my bits here. And there we go. So those are both good. Pretty much dead center. So we're done with this setup right now. I have to glue the blanks in. Now before these tubes are glued into the blanks, you need to rough them up a bit because the surface is a little too smooth for the glue to properly adhere to. So I take a file to them. It's rather unelegant thing to do. and just scratch them up. And do that to both of them. So that's going to go right in there. There's something in the way here. Oh, there we go. Okay. They get glued in. Now normally I glue them in with polyurethane glue and leave them overnight because I've just found it to be more reliable, but everyone's got different opinions on that kind of thing. Usually no one's willing to wait that long, so, and considering I'd like to turn these in a little while, I guess I'll just use CA glue. I will just take this off. I'll have to replace that with a mandrel. And we'll take off our chuck. There we go. Alright. Now I just need the CA, and I should probably do a little vacuuming too. So, we'll just start with this one. And we're waiting for glue to come out of a bottle. Isn't that exciting? Oh, here we go. Put a decent amount on because I'm going to spread that around. I'll use my little makeshift bottle stopper. And we'll spread that on each side. That's probably more than enough. Oh yeah. I don't really have the luxury of waiting like I do with polyurethane glue. This has got to go in right away. Twist it as it goes in to help it spread around. And in. Wipe off some excess. That's good. So that one's in. We'll do the same thing to the other one. Yeah, stuff sets pretty quickly, but before I put it through the stress of being turned on a lathe, I prefer to leave it for a good half hour just to make sure it's really solid. Same thing as I do with the CA glue finish before I start polishing it. I've had good luck waiting about that long. Mind you, it depends on how thick you put it on. Some CA glue finishes I've had to wait a lot longer than a half hour because it just wouldn't dry. Spread that around. And if you're curious as to whether I should be wearing gloves, yes I should. Okay, here we go. And same thing, put it in, twist it on the way in. And there we go. And I'll let those sit for about 30 minutes. and that gives me a chance to clean up. Okay, so I've finished with these blanks on the pen mill, squared at the ends, and they're on the lathe and ready to turn. So I just sharpened my little spindle gouge. I will eventually have to pick up some better chisels than the ones that came with this little Mastercraft lathe, but so far they're doing all right as long as you learn how to sharpen them. I'm still really working on how to keep them really sharp. Seems more of an art form. But let's see how we do. Alright, so I'm going to switch to the skew now, so we're pretty close to the bushings. The bushings for these kits are designed so that if you get them flush with the bushings, then you are good for transitioning to the hardware that comes with the kit. So you're looking for soft edges, nothing the finger's really going to catch on, nothing you're going to notice when you're touching the pen. So we'll go with the skew now because it's got a nice flat edge on it and gives us a little more control to smooth out this wavy lines here from uneven cutting by my spindle gouge, which is probably just technique. I'm sure I'll get that flatter in time. It's not bad. I think that's about the shape we want. I think I can make any final adjustments here just through sanding. So I think that is pretty good. Maybe a little extra hanging there. Sanding will take that off. An interesting color. Really, I didn't know orange wood existed until I really got into it. So, and we'll get sanding. Alright, so we'll start with 120 grit and see if we can just make sure we take out any tool marks. And let's see how we do. That's looking pretty smooth. Very glassy. Nice. This is the time to look up close for any odd scratches or tool marks maybe that were missed. Although you should actually be doing that on every level. And I'm not really seeing any, which is good. Just seeing wood grain. Maybe an occasional mark. No, it's pretty good. So, it's about time to put on a CA finish. Alright, we'll do that next. Alright, so I'm not sure who First, I figured out that cyanoacrylate glue, otherwise known as super glue, made a good finish on woodworking projects, but it does do a really nice job if you do it rightly, if you do it properly. My bottle here is mostly destroyed from closing and reopening it and having the glue dry, and luckily I think the bottle's almost empty. But for a CA glue finish, it only takes a drop or two, so there we go. Ooh. I'll quickly put it on. Alright, missed the very end on the cap on that sweep. But we'll be putting on a few more layers and we'll get it on the way back. Now what a lot of people do is now put on an accelerator. I don't have one. So I wait for about 5 minutes. And I put on another layer then. I usually end up with about 3 layers. I might go higher if it's still looking clean, which really depends on how well I put it on. Anyway, you don't really need to watch me put on more layers. The polishing afterwards is a little more interesting, so we'll skip ahead. Alright. So the CA on these is nice and dry. So I'm going to start on the micro mesh. Start with the 1500. See how well it smooths out. See if I need to redo anything. Hopefully I won't. Always done with the micro mesh wet. See as the surface picks up the shine. The sound changes and feedback to the micro mesh changes. So you can feel the whole thing smoothing out. Looks pretty good. And just like the sandpaper, you want to go sideways as well. That's looking nice so far. Let me start stepping up through all the levels. From 1500 all the way up to 12,000 grit. When you notice later that I fast forwarded this whole part, just say, "Thank you, Mike." And that looks pretty good. That's all the way up to 12,000. Just wipe them off. Now, being CA glue, they may currently be glued to the bushings, which is always fun. But if you're careful, they will come off without taking anything with them. Oh, there's one came off right now. The others, if they don't come off right away, I find just a good, usually tap it around. There we go. One's off. And that one came off. And off. There we go. So bushings are off. That's a CA glue finish on an Grande pen, and it's ready for assembly. Now, actual assembly of the pen is not terribly complicated. That's our kit here. I actually find the most complicated part just getting everything out of the little plastic bags. Is it me, or are they really a pain to open? Quite often I just keep a knife handy and slice them all, but it's a center band. There's the clip for the cap. Let's get a little more light. Okay. These are the fittings for the barrel. That's an additional fitting for the clip on the cap. And we've got a top and bottom finial in here. And that's our section with the nib and the feed, which we'll worry about in a minute. Now, I do not have a pen press, so I end up using one of these clamps as my pen press, and it works. It's very simple replacement. Just be careful things don't go in on an angle. So let's get a look here. I'm not seeing a really pronounced grain that suggests I should only be doing this in one direction or the other. So I'm fairly happy with this arrangement of up. So make that the bottom. That's going to be our center band. And that holds the finial on the other end. So we'll start by just squeezing that in with our clamp. It's pretty simple. Maybe one day I'll buy a pen press. But I do love my quick grip clamps. Okay, and just nice and easy, don't force anything, and it's on, and release. Okay. This piece on the top holds the finial on. The finial screws down to that, so that's going to go in as well. That's going in pretty well without the clamp, actually. But I'll clamp it a little bit anyway. We just want to get it flush with the top of the cap. That's good. And now the cap just screws on, but it's going to screw on over the clip, and this retaining ring here is what the clip sits in. So that on there. Just make sure it's sitting in that little indented section, and then we screw on the cap. There we go. Looks pretty good. And then the body of the pen. Now, this piece is what we screw the section into, so that goes on the top. Whereas this piece, we screw the bottom finial into. So that goes in our bottom, right there. Give an extra little squeeze in the clamp. Good. And we put that in the top, just like that. Those are the threads that screw into the cap. So squeeze it again. There we go. And the bottom finial just screws in down here. It's plastic. We just screw that in, and that's our bottom. And you can test the fit. Screw that on. There you go. And this model pen does not post. So if they change the bottom finial and put some threads on there, I'm sure they could. But it's kind of big to post it anyway, so it's not a big deal. So now we just need the nib and feed and housing in the section. There's our converter. This is the only part of the pen that actually writes. The rest is for looks and for grip, for comfort. And there we go. There's our Grande fountain pen in Paduk wood. And that's done. Not too shabby. One of my favorite pens is like this, except it's one of the first ones I did, and it's in zebra wood. Anyway, hope that helped. That's a little bit of what I do. Not really a big deal, but I do put a decent amount of effort into every one of them, which is why, unfortunately, they're not entirely cheap, although I think my prices are pretty competitive considering. So I hope this helps. Thanks very much.